Alright guys, I'm going to sit down for this video. My back is bothering me. So, I want to talk a little bit about winter service. So earlier, it was last week, I talked a little bit about battery minders and batteries and stuff. It's one of those things with the winter coming for us. I realize not everybody's going into the winter, but I treat whether or not, like if I was down, let's say in the southern states or somewhere where it's warm, I think I would still be doing a lot of the similar things that I would normally do, just because it's a yearly process for me, and I've done it for years and years and years. So I actually just finishing doing it on the 3/4 ton, which you guys can't see, I don't think, in the video right at the moment. We'll turn the camera here in a minute and talk a little bit about that. I actually just swapped injectors around. For you guys that are interested, I will have some injectors. I don't have them online. The reason I took the injectors offline, just to go off topic for a minute, the reason I took the injectors offline is I'm actually changing some stuff up with the injection or the injector line. So I'll be doing a completely different program for the injectors. That's the reason I took them down. Not that there was anything wrong with the stuff before, but I would like to go into a larger scale of doing it, and I just couldn't do it the way that I was doing it, so we're changing the way we're doing it. So we will have a better product, in my opinion, than we did before, a better range of product. There again, when the dyno shows up, we will do all kinds of testing. I'll show you what to do and how to do it with all the different pumps and yada, yada, yada. So, get back on track here. So, talking about winter maintenance. So, running 12 valve, I personally don't run synthetic oil. Now, if you're running synthetic oil, in the summertime, I would recommend running a 1540 synthetic, myself personally. Do as you may. Brand, whatever brand floats your boat. I don't have a particular brand that I use all the time myself. Usually it's whatever's on sale or a good deal. Like I want to use a quality oil, but completely up to you. Use whatever you want. Now, if you want to run a synthetic, run a 1540 in the summertime. Now in the winter time, you can go down to a 540 if you want. You can go down to even thinner than that if you really want to. Now what I do personally is I run a 1540 conventional. There again, depends on what's on sale. Sometimes it'll be Dello, sometimes it's Shell Rotella, sometimes it's house brand from different places, Boss Lubricants, which you guys probably never heard of Boss Lubricants. They're a local company to us. And I've never had any problems. I don't have oiling problems. No matter what kind of oil I've used, I don't have oiling problems. Now, what I do different than a lot of people is in the winter time, I actually run a conventional. Actually, this stuff right here, Rotella T4, but instead of 1540, I run a 1030. The reason for that is you get oil pressure faster, yada, yada, yada. Now, for many years, I did run a 1540 until I learned more about oil and all that type of stuff. And the 1030, you do have a little bit lower oil pressure, but when it's really cold out, I don't find you see a difference myself. Now, if you're running your truck extreme duty in the wintertime, like you're hauling really heavy and all that type of stuff, maybe switching over to a synthetic, being a 540 or something like that, maybe would not be a bad idea, or run 1540. Now, when I was using this truck for towing all the time, even in the wintertime, I just ran 1540, make sure I had the truck plugged in, never had any issues. But if you're running it heavy all the time and you want the truck to be able to start easier, you can go into that 540 synthetic kind of idea. Now, myself personally, even when I am towing, I just don't drive like an idiot. Make sure your oil pressure is good and all that stuff. I run this 1030 Shell Rotella. There's lots of different companies that make it, but Shell Rotella is the one that I usually use because it's easy for me to get. And this time of year, usually it comes on sale. I bought these ones for $87 a pail, I think it was, Canadian. So it was reasonably priced. So I bought a couple pails of it. Now this is what I run in my skid steer all year round. I don't run my skid steer extreme duty by any stretch. I change oil in it 3 times a year, long before the hours are due, because it starts and shuts off all the time. So I run that in my skid steer. I run it in the truck, and then I use this basically like my lawnmower, any of that type of stuff that I need lighter duty oil or lighter oil for. That's what I just use that. So change the oil. So what I do in the fall, I actually did an oil change not that long ago on this. You guys would have seen me doing the video. I did a video on it. I didn't change the bypass oil filter because I didn't have any. I have done that now. And the only reason I did it is because I was due for an oil change. I change it every 5,000 kilometers, which is probably way more often than I need to. But oil is cheap, engines are expensive. So I switched over to the 1030 on my oil change, changed my oil filter, my bypass oil filter. And also something else, this is kind of controversial. I know lots of people think that it's a waste. The way I've always done it, don't have problems, so that is the reason I continue to do it, is I do a dump and fill on my coolant every fall. So now, granted, this engine has been, well, was out. When did we swap the engine? This spring, I guess. I'm still, because my time come due, I do it in the fall all the time. I don't, like if I did it 2 or 3 weeks ago, okay, I wouldn't do it. But I do a dump and fill on my coolant, which basically the dump and fill, what I call dump and fill, is you take your rad cap off, you open up the drain cock on your rad, you drain out whatever will come out, okay? And then mix 50-50 with deionized water, fill back up again. That's what I do. I do that every fall. And the reason for that, my opinion, is you never have to worry about your coolant being no good. And like even on a system this size, you really don't get that much coolant out. I did about let's say probably 7-8 quarts, which is a gallon and a half-ish. Yeah, about a gallon and a half is what I took out, I put back in. Now, I realize lots of people say, oh, you can just test it. You don't have to change it all the time. 100% you are correct. You do not have to. But it was an old boy that showed me a lot of things, actually. And he's passed away many years ago. Like his wife has passed, even his son has passed away. So they're like the family's basically gone, or the part of the family I knew anyway. He taught me a lot of things, and he said to me, if you're doing services all the time, you tend not to have to work on your vehicle. And when I first said that, I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You're doing services all the time. You're working on it all the time. But when it came down to it, changing your oil more often, changing your coolant more often. I change my diffs and all that stuff. I do that every spring. The fluid in my diffs, the fluid in my transfer case, the fluid in my transmission. I do another oil change. I don't usually do the coolant. I only do the coolant in the fall. But I do that every spring. I do this every fall. And I tend not to have problems. I don't seem to have gear problems. I don't have brake problems because I do brake fluid flush usually. There again, I don't get carried away doing brake fluid flush, but it's just a constant revolving thing. It always has new fluid in it. It is what it is. So take it as a grain of salt. If you want to do it the way I do it, this is how I do it. I've been doing it this way now for since I started driving when I was 17, so 22 years. And I don't have a lot of failures. Now, granted, don't get me wrong, I've had failures, but that has to do with me, not to do with the vehicles. Like when you're asking an engine that was designed to make, let's say, 250, 300 horsepower kind of idea, to make 6, 7, 8, 900 horsepower, you're gonna have problems. Stuff's gonna wear out, you're gonna have braking stuff. It is what it is. But for the most part, my stuff is actually this truck. Sorry guys, getting over a cold or something. This truck has been a test mule for me. It gets rat bagged on all the time. It is well used over the years, especially has been a platform for me to use for testing and swapping compounds and engines and transmissions, and I've done a lot of stuff. This truck has had a lot. I've taken a lot of bolts in and out, enough to the point where I had to change some of the bolts because bolts were wore out. So hopefully this gives you guys some insight. So winter's coming. If you want to swap over to doing doing what I'm doing, if you live in the climate where you have to, by all means, that's what I do. Just thought I would talk about it a little bit because I was doing it. And like, subscribe, hit me down in the comments, and remember, it's not rocket science, but if you're going to be dumb, you better be tough.